Hi guys, my name's Alan and I'm a recovered drug addict. Does it sound echoey or is it just me? It's my weary old ears. Okay, cool. So, it's nice to be here. It's good to see a few people here. And I'm going to just talk for a little while and see what happens and see what comes out. I kind of go out of my way not to try and plan too much around what I'm going to say or where I'm going to go any time I've been asked to talk, simply because if I do, I get in the way of it. It becomes about me sounding funny or me impressing people or me doing what I think you guys will want me to do so that you'll like me. And the truth of the matter is, I never get it right when I do it. I never get it right. So what I do, I have a simple routine and I've done it just about every time. Before I do a talk, I go in the toilet, I get down on my knees, and I just ask the God of my understanding to help me do his stuff. I need to say to every man in this room today, with a good true aim, who didn't leave puddles on the floor, I thank you. It's a privilege to stand before you with dry knees, and that's not always the case. So my story is I used for a long time until I could use no more, and Cocaine Anonymous picked me up and saved my life. If I don't do anything monumentally stupid between now and Monday, and I make it to Monday, I'll be privileged to have experienced 11 years of sobriety. And I've heard loads of people say it's not about the clean time, but 11 years for an addict like me is such a big deal. Such a big deal. There's so many times that I nearly didn't make it. So to be here and to be an active member of Cocaine Anonymous truly is a privilege. So I remember the first time I used and I remember the last time I used. And that's not a requirement for membership. It doesn't really matter, but to me I do. The last time I used, I was in a prison cell just the other side of the water in a place called Camp Hill. And my cellmate had got a bag of prison heroin. Now, anyone who's ever seen a bag of prison heroin will know that bag is quite an exaggeration. So he had this thing, and I'd been queued up in a cell with him for about 3 days by now, so obviously we were great friends and tight. And you got this little prison Joey, and I remember sitting on the bunk watching him, and he got a Kit Kat wrapper, and he went through this sort of ritual of flattening the foil and smoothing the foil and putting butter over the foil and flattening it again, and went through this whole ritual, and he made this tube up, and he opened up this teeny tiny Rizzler, and these little particles of powder fell onto it. He folded it, he made a taper, rolled up toilet roll to make a taper to burn it, made a taper about 1.5 feet long, because he was an optimistic guy. And he lit it, did a line. I thought, now it's going to happen. Did another line. I thought, in a minute he's going to, because we're tight, 3 days. Did another line. I thought, maybe he's forgot I'm here. Clear my throat. Just going to make a cuppa if you want one. No, I'm all right. Did another line. And I watched him back and forwards, and he did his sort of 6 lines. And each time my heart sank a little more. Each time it just sank a little more. And then it was gone. Then, in what I can only describe as a fit of deranged generosity, he handed me the tube. And it was like this golden sabre that he passed over to me. I knew it. 3 days were tight. I rolled it out and I flattened it out, and with imagination and the right light and the right angle, you could see the slightest colour to it. So I folded it up and I bent it. I got myself all positioned. And I got the other 1.5 foot of his taper that was still left over. And I lit it and I put it under the foil. The next 3 or 4 things that happened really quickly. In a split second, in a flash of butter and nasal hair and half an eyebrow, it was gone. And that was it. That was the last time I used. And the truth of it is, the majority of my using for years and years and years was of that ilk. Was comical at best, was tragic in reality. When I came to Cocaine Anonymous, and when I sat in other 12-step rooms and I heard you guys share some of your stories and some of the stuff you guys did, I just thought, geez, I wish it was like that for me. I wish it was like that for me. I thank God that Cocaine Anonymous is inclusive of all substances. It's not about cocaine and just cocaine. Because I'm not sure I even ever used cocaine. I know I've used some really dodgy speed. And people have said, that's coke, that is. Probably some really dodgy Ajax. And people said, that's coke, that is. But I don't know that I've ever used cocaine. I hear it's quite nice. So I've been told, but it's not my experience. The first thing I started using was alcohol. When I was quite small, I think I was about 7 or 8 years old, my dad gave me some sherry at Christmas. And I remember drinking it on Christmas Day and passing out. I don't know how much he let me drink, but I remember starting to drink, and then I remember I went to sleep. The Wizard of Oz was on because in them days the Wizard of Oz was always on Christmas Day. It was the law. It always happened. And I went to sleep. Wizard of Oz was on when it was still in black and white, so it was early in the film. And when I woke up, there was a thing called Sailor of the Century on. And there was a big gap of time that had disappeared. And I felt rough, and my mouth felt horrible, and my stomach felt horrible, and my head was all queasy. And I thought, I like that. I'll have a bit of that. And I did. I did for years and years. I grew up in the West Country, surrounded by cider farms. And in a place called Slimbridge, near where I live, there was a cider farm that was run by a guy called Bob. We used to call him Wobbly Bob. And for 50 pence, you could get a gallon of rough cider from Wobbly Bob. And it went by the name of Wobbly Bob's Widowmaker. Now, anybody that's ever put rough cider into their bodies will know that as a substance, it does everything it can to get out of your body. As quick as it can, and in any direction it can. And it's seldom a pretty sight. And it's seldom enjoyable. But I loved Wobbly Bob's Widowmaker. And I drank it and drank it and drank it. And when my school friends stopped drinking it, because of some of the horrific things it did to their bodies, I kept drinking it. I kept drinking it. I kept drinking it. And I drank this stuff for years, because we could go down to Wobbly Bob's, and he didn't care how old you were. All he cared is that you had something resembling a container. It didn't matter if it had petrol in it or cider in it before, that he could pour this stuff in, take his 50p a gallon, and off we'd go. And I liked it, and I felt all right when I drank it, and I had absolutely no understanding of why that was. I had no concept of alcoholism, of drug addiction, of spiritual maladies, of fixing it. All I knew was when I put this stuff into me, it was all right. And when I didn't put this stuff into me, it just kind of wasn't. Nothing seemed to point in the right direction. My legs would be going that way, and my arms would be going that way, and my head would be going that way. And I'm not a tall guy, but I was kind of this tall by the time I was 9 or 10. So I was this gangly whatever, just wandering around with my head all over the shop. And Wobbly Bob's Widowmaker helped. So I then went through school, kind of. I experimented with some other stuff. I kind of went through a glue sniffing stage and a gas thing. I'd kind of go home absolutely reeking of Evo stick with it stuck everywhere, and kind of parents would go, "What are you doing?" And I'd be going, "What are you on about?" I'd done nothing. "You've been sniffing it, don't be so stupid, sniffing glue. We've been doing woodwork at school today." That's what I hadn't even been to school. Just tried some other stuff. But for me, for a long time, alcohol worked. Alcohol was a constant. I heard somebody say once in these rooms, if drugs and alcohol are your problem, stop drinking and stop using. That's all you need to do. If drugs and alcohol are your problem, just stop. Just don't bloody do it anymore. If, however, drugs and alcohol are your solution, which is the way it was and still would be for me now, then you might have a bit of an issue. And I didn't really understand it to start with, because for me, for a long time, I didn't understand what alcohol was doing for me. It didn't think that far. So I went through school and stuff happened, and they kind of asked me if I'd leave, and I went, yeah, gladly. And I went back to kind of do some exams at the end of it, and they said, no, we asked you to leave. That means we don't really want you back. And that was cool, and I went and worked on a building site. You could kind of finish school 14, 15, go and jump on a building site under the guise of work experience and be left alone. And that's what I did. And kept drinking, started to get into a bit of trouble. People that were close to me started to move away. Started to behave a bit off the wall, but still quite unaware that there was an issue, that there was a problem. And that was it. The stories within that and the little war stories are just a bit rubbish to waste everyone's time stood up here talking about. The gist of it is that for a long time, drinking kept me all right. However, there then come a time when it didn't anymore. There then come a time where I was drinking myself sober and still feeling like I wanted to die. Still feeling like I couldn't deal with it anymore. On the odd times I was fortunate enough to drink myself to blackout, the moment I woke up, it was misery, it was pain, it was emptiness to my very, 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 very core. And around that time, somebody introduced me to methadone, which I liked. Especially if I mixed it with cider, I liked it a lot. Really, really liked it. And where I lived then, the doctors were a lot more naive than they are, certainly in Bournemouth, where I live now. And I went to my doctor and I said, I think I've got a heroin problem. I need your help. And the doctor went, all right, son, it'll be all right. Tell me. And I told him this whole tale of woe about my life and about how I'd been dragged into heroin use. Never even seen a bag of gear at that point. Never touched it. And he went, I'll put you on this thing called methadone. And they put me on an 80 mil a day maintenance script on a monthly pickup. I had arrived. Life got considerably better at that point. I still didn't have a clue what I was doing. All I knew was that if I drank this green substance, it was all right. I didn't feel empty, didn't feel alone, I wasn't consumed by fear. But sure enough, as time went on, I drank more of it, I added more to it, I started doing anything and everything I could, and one week it ran out, and I had to start scoring, and that was kind of how my journey and the destruction in my journey increased. But even then, it was never kind of sunshine and happiness. The little place I lived, most of my days consisted of getting up in the morning, walking for 14 miles to the nearest town, waddling into the local Tesco's or Waitrose, 7.5, 8 stone, staggering out of there bandy-legged, about 13 stone, with cheese and bacon secreted in places God never intended cheese and bacon to go. I would go off, I would sell it, I would get a bag, I would do the bag, I would go back and steal more cheese and bacon. I would go, I would sell it, I would get a bag, I would do half of the bag to save some for later on because I didn't want to be ill. And I'd walk home. I'd then do the other half a bag that I'd saved for later so I wouldn't be ill and save a spoon wash for the next morning and try and get to bed. I would then get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and do the spoon wash that I'd saved for the following morning and sit up half the night. Following morning I'd get up, again and again and again and again and again. And within this, the people that had got close to me, thank God, had had the sense to get away. The woman I'd married, thinking that would help and sort me out, thankfully had got away from me as far as she could. The friends had backed off, and the family couldn't cope with being close to me anymore because it was just too damn painful. My dear old Nan was probably the only person who stayed close. And in truth, now I loved my dear old Nan. She brought me up absolutely. I absolutely have a real issue with people who talk to people like me and say you wouldn't treat your family like that if you loved them. I loved her with all my heart. That didn't stop me stealing from her. That didn't stop me lying to her. That didn't stop me cheating. That didn't stop me when she was out climbing through the window in her old people's home to go and steal her pension money from under her bed. I didn't know about powerlessness. I didn't know about the disease of addiction. All I knew was I had to have. So I'm on really best behaviour today because there's a lot of kids about, so I'm not swearing, which is quite a big deal because I can get quite passionate and a little bit sweary about this. But I really do have an issue with people who don't understand that, and I just wish they'd keep their opinions to themselves. It didn't matter how much I loved you. I no longer had control over this disease, and I no longer had control over what I was going to do to score again and again and again. And it went like that for a long time. So eventually I moved away from the countryside and from where I grew up. I moved away from there because nobody would talk to me. Nobody would look at me. The only people who wanted anything to do with me was to smash my head in because I'd ripped them off, stole from them, owed them money, etc., etc. And my sister had moved to Southampton, and I'd used with her for years, and she'd moved away and got clean, and she said, come with me, come and move with me, and I'll help you out. And I said, that's great, yeah, brilliant, I'll do that. And I hopped on a train with the current woman that I'd latched onto at that time, because there was nowhere in the world I could be on my own, and because two of us could probably scrape a bag up together better than one of us. And I went to stay with my sister, and within 3 days I'd stolen the money from my niece's piggy banks. I'd stolen money from my sister. and I'd stolen pot off her partner who was selling at the time. And she said, Al, you can't be doing this. So I moved out of there and ended up on the streets. And still full of arrogance, still full of ego, still kind of not able to see exactly what was going on or the truth of what was going on. Just then, just consumed by must use. And I got myself a penny whistle. I decided, I've always loved the blues. And I had there's this old blues guy, a guy called Robert Johnson, who was a real wreckhead and a fantastic bluesman and guitarist. And I had this delusion of being this kind of old hobo-y type Robert Johnson style, but not very musical. So I got myself a penny whistle. I used to say I bought a penny whistle. I stole a penny whistle. And I went to the council in Southampton. And I got a busker's license. So now I'm a bona fide musician. A blues man. Bit like Robert Johnson. And I used to take this penny whistle and I used to sit outside Burger King in Southampton and play the one and only tune I knew. The one and only tune I knew. And it just happened to be The Great Escape. And I would sit there on the floor, do 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 again and again and again and again. As God's my witness, it got to the point where the locals in the town would come by and say, "Look, please. For the love of God, we'll really, really pay you if you can learn another tune." Do 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 do. And if someone come by and just put a few coppers in a raggy old hat that I had on the floor, guys, the love I would feel. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, Jesus loves you. Thank you so much. I feel it. But if they didn't, if they walked by and stole my gift, my music, my soul that I was giving, man, the hatred, the resentment. I didn't know it was called resentment then. I didn't know that it was unusual to sit and plan what I was going to do to them. To work out how I was going to follow them home. I was going to sit in the hedge in their garden. I was going to wait till 3 o'clock in the morning. And I was going to smash every single window out of their homes. Because they stole from me. Do-do, do-do-do-do-do. Do, again and again and again and again. And I'd just about scrape up a tenner and I'd go off to an area in that town called St Mary's and I'd make a phone call and the guy on the other side would say, "Yeah, I'm on my way." At that moment, I would start to feel better. No substance in me, haven't even got it on my hands. It's not touching me in any way, but at that moment, I start to feel better. See, this doesn't happen to ordinary people. This is a thing that happens to people like us. And I'd wait and 5 minutes. He'll be back in it. Is that him? Oh, no. 10 minutes. I hope he's all right. Half hour, he still hasn't turned up. I think I'll ring him again. I've already spent 50p of his tenner and I'm chipping into the next bit of it. He's saying, yeah, I'm on my way. Hour later, he'll turn up. Ba-dum, deal done. He's off. I've got it in my hand and I'm off. And this, again, this kind of stuff happened to me on more than one occasion, and this was the reality of my using. I would scurry off to the bottom of one of the multi-storey blocks over in that area. I'd get my little hit kit out, get my spoon out, get my little bag. Yes! Oh, we're all right now. And as I'd split it open, I mean, I'm no Einstein, but I'm not dumb as mud. I do have a tiny degree of common sense. As I'd split it open, I would get the faintest whiff of oxtail soup. But I think, nah, I've been scoring off him for 3 days. He's solid. He ain't going to rip me off. I give him a tenner a day. He ain't going to lose my custom. He ain't that stupid. Some water in it. Start cooking it. Now, as I'm cooking it up, the smell of oxtail soup is getting stronger and stronger. But the part of my mind that processes logic is no longer functioning. It hasn't been functioning for a long time. And the truth is, I end up standing at the bottom of a stairwell in a multi-storey block of flats, trousers by my ankles, trying to inject oxtail soup into my groin, still thinking there's not a problem, still thinking it's not that big a deal. So the way it happened for me is I ended up getting into more trouble, going to jail again. I'd been in and out of jail many, many times. And when I got into jail, they pulled me to one side. They said, listen, Dobbo, this is a situation. If you get involved in some kind of treatment thing while you're in the jail, there's a chance, there's a possibility you'll get parole. At that point, I made a conscious decision that I was to become a recovery god. I was going to learn about this stuff. I was going to make sure I could tell you anything I needed to about recovery, and particularly about the 12 steps. Now, this is the thing, this is the important thing. I didn't come here to get clean. I didn't come here to get sober. I didn't come here to find a God of any description. I came here to use. It's as simple as that. And the absolute arrogance of me, I then spent the first 2 years of this fellowship sat watching people coming through the doors thinking, wonder if they're ready. Wonder if their motives are pure. But you see what happened, and it was the most beautiful thing in the world, is you bunch of fellows reeled me in with your spiritual trickery, and I didn't see it coming. I didn't see it coming. You didn't say keep coming back. You said stay here. You didn't say it'll be all right to sit around and do nothing. You said stay here and do something. You didn't say you're useless, sit in the corner. You said come and wash some dishes with us. We need you here. And for the first time in my life, I started to feel like I had a place. I started to feel like I was part of something. If I'd known what you were up to, I'd have probably bolted. You didn't let me know. Bill Wilson talked about a thing called the language of the heart. And he said that when two of us sit and share from the heart, this language of the heart thing happens, he said, and it's absolutely unmistakable. See, we can transmit this to each other like no other beings on the planet can. And out there's a whole bunch of other people who do recovery-related stuff and love them. And I hope they keep doing it. But not like we do it. When another addict sat down in front of me, looked me straight in the eye and went, I know what you mean. For just about the first time in my life, I believed him. When I told him about the penny whistle, he did what you guys did. He laughed. I told that to someone straight once, and they started backing away from me really slowly. The language of the heart is a fantastic thing. So I did the prison thing. I was fortunate enough then. CA didn't do any postal sponsorship then, but AA did, and I was fortunate enough to get wired up with someone and started writing to me and started going on about the big book and kind of directing me to it, and I started getting into it and hitting a few meetings, and it was really, really cool, and started to reel me in. And then a couple of guys from my hometown came in, a couple of CA members came in, and just did a little share, just did a little talk. One of them who'd been around a little while, and another one was a guy who'd just been sponsoring about 2 or 3 weeks, and he dragged his ass along with him as well. And it was revealed to me that Cocaine Anonymous was here, and that I didn't have to be on my own anymore, and that there was a solution, and that there was a fellowship that was focused on this solution. So started doing some stuff, started to kind of not really care that much about, well, no, actually I did. Do you know what? Oh, such a liar. I was just, and I've said this before, I didn't really care if I got parole or anything by then. Crock of shit. Of course I cared about getting parole. And they give me it, and I come out and I went into a treatment asylum, treatment facility in my local town. Been in jail a fair few years. Started looking around the group room, seeing what I could see. Yeah, there's going to be something in here. So somebody had told me when I was in jail, coming out, about women. And about women in the fellowship. And about women in treatment. And he'd said to me, the thing you need to understand is if you're in this situation and you're looking for a woman, the odds are really, really good. But the goods are really, really odd. So I met my wife in treatment and we got married. So that was nice. I was talking to someone about this earlier on. What that did for me is when I come out of institutions, it kept me in a place stable enough for Cocaine Anonymous to wrap its arms around me and keep me safe. If I hadn't have done that, God knows where I'd have ended up. But what I do know is that was part of my journey. And I came out and I got involved in Cocaine Anonymous straight away. I got myself a home group. There was a meeting on a Tuesday night in Bournemouth, big book audio meeting, still a fantastic meeting. I dived into it. There's a few people in this room now who were there back then. Just got in the middle of it. Just got into service. Me and a dear friend of mine, we were both in this treatment centre together. There was a shed at the bottom of the garden. We used to get down there. We used to read the big book together, look at the traditions, look at the kind of World Service Manual, just diving into this, just getting involved in this. Someone had said, if you owe any sobriety or clean time whatsoever to the fellowship of your choice and you're not giving back, you're a thief. A thief. And I thought, it's a bit bloody strong, isn't it? I'm reformed, I am. But he was right. See, I didn't have the luxury to come to Cocaine Anonymous and take. My life depended on me coming to Cocaine Anonymous and giving. And as a result of that, I was able to stay. So I got myself a sponsor. I left treatment. Me and my wife-to-be skipped off into the sunset. Cool and funky. She's tolerated me for years now. If you want to see someone with God in their life, talk to the wife. Because it turns out God can give patience and tolerance to anyone. So I got myself a sponsor, and the first guy that sponsored me was, to this day, the most miserable looking sod I've ever seen. I always liken him to, so if you imagine death, without his coat on. This is what this guy was like. And he was miserable. Come from Manchester. Now, it turns out that everyone from Manchester isn't miserable, but then I thought they were. But what this guy had is he had the ability to love me enough to be honest with me. And we started working the steps together. And very, very quickly, we were into step work. We got together, we went through the first 3 steps, and he had me off doing inventory. I said to him, how long have I got? He said, how long do you want to be sick? Simple as that. Within a week, a little over, I was doing a step 5 with him. Couldn't believe it. At the end of the step 5, he called me arrogant. Cheeky. Unbelievable. He hardly knew me. I'd already been clean and sober 6 or 7 months in prison. I couldn't be arrogant. I knew everything in the book. I told him. He called me other things as well. He wasn't very nice to me. Absolutely love that man with all my heart. Helped me on this journey, got me on the way. So I got involved in Cocaine Anonymous and a home group and started serving my fellowship. And it's been touched on today, some stuff about service, some of the stuff our delegates do. This idea that they hop on a plane and they go over to the States and they kind of spend all the time in their Speedos by the pool, just kicking back. So I'm the kind of sado that reads through all the transcripts from these things, and there's lots of them. And trust me, the conference is not a chilled out, relaxed, kick your feet back kind of environment. And they go over there, they work their little asses off for us. And that's just as important as whoever made the tea today, or whoever sat this up today. And this is the thing, and this is the beauty of Cocaine Anonymous. There's a job for every single person in this room. If anybody ever says to you, you can't serve in this fellowship till you're 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever, find the appropriate way to deliver it and tell them where to stick it. Because there's a job for every single person in this room. And I don't care if you're 2 minutes in or 20 years in. Everybody in our fellowship is needed. Because see, that was important for me when I got here. Because the only thing people ever needed me to do was piss off as quickly as possible. The only place people have ever needed me to stay has been here. It's been in Cocaine Anonymous. So that's what I do, and I find ways to serve. Like Jim was saying earlier on, I've always been involved in PI one way or another. We're an anonymous fellowship, not a secret society. If people don't know we're out there, how arrogant are we to sit here just expecting people to come through the door? If we don't go out and find them like our lives depend on it, how far up our own asses are our heads? We need to do this, guys. We need to drag people in. Because we ain't winning with this thing. There's people out on the streets. I will absolutely guarantee you, if a bunch of us walk down the road now, we'll find people dying on the streets from this illness, from this disease. It's just a fact. And I don't care what town you're in. The other side of that coin is, in Cocaine Anonymous, we've got a solution to this. The solution is to work the steps. So my sponsor takes me through the steps, and I kind of take his guidance as much as I can. There's a couple of little slip-ups and a couple of times I don't and decide that I know better. I've got three kids. Little and Jack, who sat up there with headphones on, hopefully still, watching a film on the iPhone because he ain't ready to hear my story yet. He's 6 years old and I don't want to tell him about injecting oxtail soup. Now's not the time. But I've got 2 older boys, and I get to the amends process a few years ago with my sponsor, and kind of he says, all right, what I want you to do is just whoa up. Leave them alone for now. And I say, all right, yeah, I'll do that. And then I go off and do the exact opposite. And I arrange to meet them. But I'm a good thinker. I'm a good dancer as well, but I'm a better thinker. And I work out that I'm not going to go and see them in their home because my first wife's still not very fond of me. I don't think she likes me very much. I can't tell because she won't talk to me. I don't think she likes me very much. So I work out I'm going to meet them in a little cafe up the road. And about a week before I go to do this, I phone up and she answers the phone. Kicks right off. And I'm, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? She swears a lot. And then she tells me what a sneaky, underhanded git I am for taking them out of the house and seeing them behind her back. And that, as far as she's concerned, she hopes I don't get to see them. That was about 10 years ago, and I've still never been able to see them, either of my grown-up boys. Because they said, Dad, it's cool what you're doing, but we don't want to upset our mum. Now, the gist of this is, part of the thing about sponsorship I wasn't getting. I was granting spiritual license to someone to pull me up. I was asking for their guidance and advice, and then I wasn't taking it. And then I was pissing and moaning because of poor old me. So it turned around, I started listening to a bit more, worked the steps, other things started coming together. Got a wife that stayed. Family, job, car, bike, all that stuff. Thankfully, nobody said to me it would be all sunshine and happiness, though. Because that's not the truth. There have been high points and low points in my sobriety. There have been good days and bad days. There have been the most incredible things, and there's been the real kick in the nuts moments. The important thing is when the kick in the nuts moments have come, I haven't gone, oh, woe is me, and had to go off and use. See, what the steps did for me is hooked me up with a power that keeps me out of the shit. And that's it. And it doesn't matter what that power is, because yours is yours and mine is mine. And it doesn't matter what I perceive it to be. The important thing is that's what the steps did for me. And as a result of doing that, I'm okay. At the beginning, I introduced myself as recovered. It still baffles me why some people have an issue with that. I've recovered. And I'll tell you how I know that. If I hadn't, I would have got up this morning, walked 14 miles, stuck cheese and bacon where God never intended cheese and bacon to go, because that's what I do in that state. That's where I go. That's the reality for me. About 2-3 years ago, so I didn't see my dad for a long time. Until, interestingly enough, he won the lottery. Then I happened to bump into him. He won £250,000 on the lottery, and I miraculously bumped into him a week later. He gave me £100 and told me to piss off then, as it happens, which upset me somewhat. But anyway, as a result of working the steps and going through the amends process, I ended up seeing him again. I was prompted to go and see him, and I went and seen him, found him propping up the bar, same as he'd ever done. I was mad because I said all right to him, and he kind of said all right and didn't even recognise me. I hadn't seen him for about 10 years, and when I'd seen him before, I'd been using. And it was really cool, and I was able to see him and start spending some time with him, and let him meet my wife and then his grandson, and fantastic thing. And then he got ill. And as he got iller and iller, he was sort of in and out of hospital, and the clock was ticking, and he was going to die, and I was able to stick around for that. And I can't remember if it's the last time or the time before, a couple of times close to when he died. It was really, really cool. I went and seen him at the old people's home he was in, and loaded him into his wheelchair, and and wheeled him off down to the pub, down to his local pub, and propped him up against the bar. He cider drinker and slow gin, big fan of slow gin, and give him a few slow gins, and he had a couple of drinks, and loaded him back in, and I'm wheeling him back up to the old people's home, trudging up this hill, and he, "You still sober, boy?" I said, yeah, Dad, yeah. He said, "Still off them damn drugs, boy?" Yeah, Dad, yeah. "Been a while now, ain't it, boy?" I said, yeah, been a while. He went, "You're a fucking disgrace to our family, boy." And the look in his eye, the relief that his son was in front of him alive and not dead like so many before. It was just such a link, such a cool moment. And that was the result of Cocaine Anonymous. That was the result of the 12 steps in this big book up here. See, if you think CA is just about not using, so much more is going to be revealed. If you think this is just about getting through it one day at a time, staying clean and sober, guys, trust me when I say you don't even know the half of it. This is so much more about that. This is so much more than that. So much more. I'm going to read just a little bit out of this big book in a minute. Before I... I've got a little card in here in my book. I suppose you can't see it, but it's a picture of a duck in front of a hedge, very clearly. And my wonderful father-in-law took it, and it says, "Duck behind a hedge." Every time I look at it, it just makes me giggle. Some people are beautiful in my life. So, I think we're just about done. There's a little bit in the book, in one of the stories. The first half of the big book is where the steps are. It's where the solution is. If you haven't got a big book and a sponsor, get a sponsor and a big book. Really, really as simple as that. If you're not sure about it, get a sponsor and a big book. If you've been in and out, get a sponsor and a big book. This is just so far away from rocket science, it ain't even funny anymore. So this is out of one of the stories, and it says, so here I am, sober, successful, serene. Just a few of the gifts of the programme for surrendering, suiting up and showing up for life every day. Good days and bad days, reality is a wild ride, and I wouldn't miss it for the world. I don't question how this programme works. I trust my God, stay involved in CA service, and go to meetings. I work with others, practice the principles of the steps to the best of my willingness each day. I don't know which one of these keeps me sober and clean, and I'm not about to try and find out. It's worked for quite a few days now, so I think I'll try it again tomorrow. Thanks for listening to me, guys.